Hi everyone, my name is Jumana and I'm a freestyle artist, and today I'm going to show you the basics of watercolor art. Now, the watercolor art is one of the most fun mediums that you could use. It's basically knowing to control the ratio between the water and the color, and today I'm going to show you how to do that. So all you're going to be needing is a brush, a sketchbook, and a watercolor palette, including 2 glasses of water instead of 1. That is because, now this is one tip I'd give you, I'd always use 2 glasses of water so that I could use one for the cool colors and one for the warm colors. Now, the cool colors are the shades of blue, purple, and green. The warm colors are the red, orange, and yellow. And the reason I would do that so that I can make sure I have a clean brush and clean color palette. So now let's start with the very basic of watercolor. I'll make sure my brush is wet, but make sure not to add a lot of water so that you don't ruin your paper. So this is the wet on wet. As you can see, the color is very light on the paper. Now the second one is going to be wet on dry. So our brush is going to be wet, whereas our paper is going to be dry. So I'm just going to wet my brush a little bit. I'm going to use the exact same color. You can see the color is more saturated and pigmented on the wet on dry technique. Now the third technique is dry on wet. Dry on dry. So you make sure your paper is dry and your brush is a little dry. I'm not going to say completely dry, otherwise you will not get enough color. So as dry as it is, I'm just going to add it to the color. As you can see, the pigment is even more. These are basically the 3 techniques in watercolor. Now, each different technique is used in different places, which we'll learn later on. Now, this is the 3 main techniques. Now, when it comes to watercolor, it's very easy for you to deal with the colors if you're able, like I said, to control the water ratio with the color ratio. So as you saw here, the more wet the color is, or the paper is, or the brush is, the more light the color is going to be, and the less or the drier it is, the more pigmented it is. So let's say, for example, you make a mistake. How can I prevent this mistake, or how can I erase it? You can basically take a tissue paper and just dab it, but I would not recommend that because otherwise it might add some texture to it, as you can see. Another way you can prevent this is you can basically take your wet brush and dry it, make sure it is completely dry, and take off all the excess pigment. You wet your brush, you make sure it's clean, you dry it, and then you pick the color. For example, if I wanted to remove this color and add another color, what you can do is just wet your brush, a clean brush, dry it, pick the excess. As simple as that. So you can see watercolor is very, very easy if you know how to control the moisture with the color. That's it. Now when I want to control the saturation, as we've said, we'll choose another color. We'll choose a blue color. Now since I used the blue, I'm going to use the other glass of water so that I keep my brushes clean. So I'm going to use the blue color. For example, this is not the shade that I want. I might want a lighter shade, like I said, with a dry clean brush. Just pick up the excess. Let's say you want more pigment. I'll add a little bit of water, just a little bit, because the more water you add, as we said, the lighter the color it gets. So we're just going to add more color and add to it. And this is another tip in watercolor: always start with light color. Always start with the lightest color, and then you can build up the color to reach to the pigment or to the saturation that you want. Now we'll go to blending. Let's say I want to blend two different colors. For example, let's say we would like to blend green and red. So what you'll basically do, you'll add the green. As you can see, I'm always starting with a very light color, and then I'll add the red color. Now, here there are a lot of different ways for you to blend it, but the easier way for me is that I just wet it. I add a little bit of one of the colors and I start blending. It's very easy. See, when it is wet, when the color is wet, it is very easier for you to blend it rather than it being dry. So I'll add a little bit of the green color now, so I can make sure it's blended well. I can dry it and just blend both colors. This is how you blend both colors. You can do the same if they were dry. It might be a little harder, but it's still the same techniques. We'll choose same colors again. And I'll just go up and blend it. In watercolor, don't be scared of colors mixing into each other, because that is the beauty of watercolor. When different colors mix, it does give a very beautiful effect. So these are the main basics of watercolor. Now let's try doing shades and lights. We'll draw a circle. Let's imagine the circle is spherical shape, so it has a dimension. Easier way for me to use is the wet on wet technique. My brush is not clean. I'll clean it. So let's say this is a spherical shape. If you're a beginner, I always recommend you starting with wet on wet. So what we'll first do is we'll just slightly wet the shape. You can directly draw it without drawing it with a pencil. This is just for your reference. Now we'll add a color. I will choose the color purple. Make sure you have enough color. And again, like I said, always start with a very light shade and then start building it up. Now we're imagining that the light is coming from this side. So there's going to be a small white ball here that's, the shiny part. And since here is the light, here's going to be the shadow. So this is going to be the shadow of the shape. See, when you do wet on wet, it's very easy for you later on to just pick up the color. One more tip about watercolor also is that you have to be very patient. When you do wet on wet, you have to be very patient for it to dry completely before adding another coat. Otherwise, you'll just keep adding up a lot of water, and this will cause the paper to start melting. So I'd like to add more color here where the shadow is. So see, here the paper is slightly dry, but I make sure that my brush is not completely wet. It's a little bit wet. I'm just putting on, it's just wet on the tip where the color is, because I want more pigment and less water. Now you can see here there are small lines that are not very blended well. So for you to blend it, just make sure your brush is a little bit wet, and it's clean, so you just blend those lines. Or you can simply just add water, so you can also add effect to it. Now here I'd like to pick more color, so it could be lighter, so I'm just gonna clean my brush and dry it. Pick up more color so it becomes lighter. And this is the end result. This is how it looks like. So this is basically the basics of watercolor. I hope you guys all enjoyed. So I hope you stay home and stay safe.